Welcome to Black History in Upstate New York. This program was produced by Victoria Basulto in conjunction with the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum and funded by the Catherine W. Davis Projects for Peace Fellowship awarded through Colgate University. Black History in Upstate New York will provide a combination of bite-sized informational videos and longer presentations by scholars on historical figures and places that emphasize the crucial role Black Americans have played in the history of upstate New York. The National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum honors anti-slavery abolitionists, their work to end slavery, and the legacy of that struggle, and strives to complete the second and ongoing abolition, the moral conviction to end racism. The Hall of Fame and Museum's contact information is available on the screen. Hello, and once again, welcome to Black History in Upstate New York. My name is Victoria Basulto, and today I will be talking about the settlement of Timbuctoo. I first learned about Timbuctoo when I came across a presentation given by the curator, writer, and scholar Amy Godine at the Gerrit Smith estate a few years ago. I had learned a lot about the abolitionist Gerrit Smith from my time working with the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum, but I had never heard of this incredible moment in history when someone had tried to enfranchise Black men when the law itself was disenfranchising them. It also was surprising to learn that such blatant disenfranchisement, voting rights restrictions, happened in New York State and was not just a fixture of the Jim Crow era in the South. So, what was Timbuctoo? In short, it was a Black settlement spearheaded by the wealthy abolitionist and landowner Gerrit Smith in the 19th century, specifically beginning in 1848. This settlement was established in North Elba, New York. The town is located in the Adirondacks near Lake Placid, and the idea was that Gerrit Smith would gift around 3,000 Black men 40 acres each of land in North Elba. This would allow the men to work the land and create wealth from it, as well as increase the land's value. Timbuctoo was meant to solve two significant issues when it came to promoting the civil rights of Black Americans. The first main problem had to do with enfranchisement. In 1846, New Yorkers rejected an amendment to the state constitution that would allow free Black men the same voting rights as white men. The New York Constitution was being revised in the 1846 Constitutional Convention, and it was here where the amendment was proposed. In 1846, the New York State Constitution required free Black men to own $250 worth of real estate, which was significantly more than what white men needed to be able to vote. This had first come into New York law in 1821. This was effectively a poll tax that disenfranchised a great portion of free Black men who would otherwise have been able to vote and influence the government on par with their white counterparts. The reason this was so effective in disenfranchising free Black men was because slavery had only officially ended in 1829 in the state of New York after the gradual abolition of slavery in New York State had begun in 1799. Gradual abolition meant that any child born after July 4th, 1799 would be free once they reached a certain age, but would be indentured, basically enslaved, to their masters until then. This meant that Black men who had just been liberated from the chains of slavery would not have had the opportunity to accumulate the necessary wealth needed to buy land. Additionally, though slavery had ended or had begun to end in New York, racism had not, and it would have been difficult for a recently liberated Black man to acquire well-paid work in order to acquire the wealth necessary to own $250 worth of real estate. Therefore, the land grant that Gerrit Smith proposed would allow them to work the land till its value would reach $250 and enfranchise thousands of Black men at the same time. The second main problem that was being addressed by Timbuctoo was the creation of a haven for Black families. Gerrit Smith, among other abolitionists, saw the dangers that Black people experienced when living in big cities like New York. Throughout the 1800s and especially after the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act, Black people were at risk of being kidnapped and sold into slavery in the South, even if they had been born free. Or if they were fugitives, then they were in danger of being sold back into slavery or returned to their former masters. This was because slave hunters roamed major urban areas in free states, and their actions were further legalized through the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act, which now required the federal government to also be responsible for the return of fugitive enslaved people. In North Elba, however, Black families would be away from major urban centers where fugitive slave hunters roamed and therefore will be removed from that danger. This is why Gerrit Smith hired agents to recruit Black families from urban areas like Syracuse, Troy, and New York City, to name a few. Among the 12 agents Gerrit Smith employed to recruit Black families were many Black men who fervently helped the project move forward. Some that you might know are Henry Highland Garnett, James McCune Smith, and Jermaine Logan. These individuals hailed from different urban centers in New York State and were leaders in their cities, as well as prominent individuals of the New York State abolitionist scene. In total, Gerrit Smith gave away 120 acres of land to 3,000 Black men from New York State. But despite the efforts of so many prominent abolitionists and the wealth of Gerrit Smith, the project was not a success. This was due to a lot of factors. For one, the Adirondacks suffered from harsh winter conditions, and this made it difficult for the settlers to adapt, especially if they were from urban areas or unused to the levels of cold experienced in the Adirondacks. Being from urban areas also meant that they were less used to rural living and made it difficult for them to make the barely arable land yield any crops, since most would not have had any farming experience if they came from a city. Additionally, their white neighbors were sometimes hostile and unwilling to help. So, between 1850 to 1870, only 13 families remained, and by 1871, only 2 families remained in the settlement in North Elba, the rest having left the region by then. Today, the memory of Timbuctoo remains alive through the work of the organization John Brown Lives. In 1848, John Brown, the radical abolitionist who advocated the use of force to end slavery, moved his family to a farm in North Elba, a farm on land that had also been granted to him by Gerrit Smith. John Brown had thought that the project was promising, and he also promised to help the Black settlers learn how to farm. His family lived there until 1860, and today the John Brown Farm State Historic Site, which contains his home and gravesite, where he was buried after his execution in 1859 for his actions in the raid on Harper's Ferry, is still there and open to visitors. Founded by Martha Swan in 1999, the organization John Brown Lives has organized a permanent exhibition curated by Amy Goldine named Dreaming of Timbuctoo at the John Brown Farm State Historic Site that allows visitors to learn about the history of Timbuctoo. If you want to learn more about this history, feel free to visit the John Brown Lives website at johnbrownlives.org. If you're in the area, feel free to visit the actual location of John Brown's farm at 115 John Brown Road, Lake Placid, New York. To learn more about the physical space, just make sure you visit the website to learn their hours of operation. Additionally, I will be linking a podcast episode created by A New York Minute in History, in which Amy Goldine and Dr. Hadley Krushek-Aaron, director of the Timbuctoo Archaeology Project, among other scholars, share their scholarship that they have conducted on the topic and the site. I highly recommend this podcast, especially as Dr. Hadley Krushek-Aaron shares her experience and the difficulties she encountered trying to uncover archaeological evidence of Timbuctoo. Once again, thank you for listening to today's presentation. Please fill out the survey linked in the video description and available at the link on your screen. This will allow you to provide feedback about the specific presentation or the program in general. Your feedback will help us in the formulation of future presentations and programs like this one. Thank you, and I hope we see you again tomorrow.